Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar, your host, and today I'm going to try and answer a simple question. Is Kamala Harris, if were she to become the President of the United States, will she be good for India or will she not be good for India? There's a lot of discussion going on right now, especially in India, about the sudden change in American politics. A few weeks ago, just about a month ago, it was very clear that Donald Trump was on his way to becoming the next president of the United States, especially at that moment when he was shot upon and he had this moment where he raised the fist to the crowd. People thought that he had won the elections at that moment. But it's amazing how 1 week in politics can bring about sea change, and so the withdrawal of Joe Biden from the race, the rise of Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee, and the tremendous enthusiasm that it generated among the Democrats. Hundreds of thousands of people have started volunteering for the Kamala Harris campaign. Money started pouring in the first 1 week. She raised more than 250 million. She's raised over $300 million already. So it is just stunning. The momentum has shifted so much from Donald Trump to Kamala Harris. So it now seems more possible that she will be the next president of the United States. Kamala Harris is a person of multiple identity. She is of Black heritage. She's also of South Asian Indian heritage. So she's also an Indian American. She's also a Black American. She's also a woman. So she has galvanized many different constituencies in the United States. Young people are excited about her because they were so upset about Genocide Joe. They just saw what Joe Biden was doing in Gaza as genocide. So they were just unwilling to support him. Young women were not excited by the prospects of two old white men. It seems that now they are so enthusiastic that they're giving a lot of money and they're willing to engage with Kamala Harris. So basically, Kamala Harris united the Democratic Party and mobilized them. There's a lot of depression in the Republican side. Their decision to select J.D. Vance as the vice presidential running mate for Donald Trump seems to have backfired. Nobody really likes Vance. And so it is, even though vice presidential candidates normally do not have a major impact on the president's election, it is quite possible that Vance might have some negative impact on Donald Trump's prospects. The race is neck and neck, even though. So basically, this is what it is. A month ago, Trump was here, Joe Biden was here, and now Kamala is here and Trump is here. So you can see that Kamala is right ahead. It is very clear that if the elections were today, she would win. It was a very important poll, the Times Siena poll, which looked at battleground states, and she was leading by 4 points in every battleground, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin. And her campaign seems to be so popular that now there are two pathways to a Democrat becoming a president. At least in this election, she could win by reaching the 270 mark needed in the Electoral College by winning Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. This is called the Rust Belt. Or she could actually win by winning North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. She's already leading in Nevada. So there's sudden discussion in India. Oh my God, we were expecting that Donald Trump would win, and now look what happened. A lot of analysts in India tried to explain Narendra Modi's visit to Moscow, where he hugged Vladimir Putin, even while there was a NATO summit taking place, the 75th NATO summit taking place in Washington, where where Washington D.C. and all NATO powers were trying to isolate Russia and Putin, and were trying to drum up support for Ukraine. Modi's basically trip to Moscow and his beer hug with Putin was seen as essentially an insult to the West, a repudiation of the West, a rejection of West-Russia policy, and of course a declaration that India has its own way of thinking about international affairs and India has an independent foreign policy. So commentators in India were saying this move of Modi to go to Moscow was predicated on two assumptions. One assumption that Russia was winning the war with Ukraine, It was just a matter of time, just a few more months, and that's it. Ukraine would surrender, or at least Russia would continue to dominate. And number two, that Donald Trump was going to win the election. So those are the two assumptions which which are part of the calculations which led Modi. And then, of course, the very strong negative reaction from Washington, the criticisms, especially leveled by Jake Sullivan on more than one occasion. Jake Sullivan is the National Security Advisor of the United States. And so then Modi announced that, okay, now I'm going to Ukraine, and he's expected to go to Ukraine anytime now. So sort of balance his visit to Moscow. So if India has done things on the assumption that Trump is going to win, then of course Kamala's win will come as a surprise. So will it harm India's interest? Will it hurt? So there are some pro-Israeli voices writing in Indian media, like you can see this article by Michael Rubin in the first post. It says, why India should worry about a Kamala Harris presidency. He basically makes 2 points. One point that he basically says is that the deep state, or the people who are in the State Department and other government institutions, will be tougher on India when it comes to human rights issues. And when it comes to discussing India's treatment of minorities, and therefore India is going to have a lot of trouble with the State Department. And then he makes a condescending remark that Kamala Harris lacks the intellectual potential to deal with the State Department. And he, like Biden, who, in spite of everything that every expert in his State Department said about the Middle East, Biden went the other way. And so there was a rebellion in the State Department. Many people quit the State Department because they were upset with Joe Biden's Middle East policy. So basically, these pro-Israeli voices are basically suggesting that Kamala Harris will not be able to go against the State Department like Joe Biden did. But the second point that he makes is, I think, just rubbish. He suggests that she's pro-Khalistan, or the pro-Khalistani forces in the United States will dominate. First, let me make it very clear. The pro-Khalistan movement is not a big deal. Okay, there's just one idiot, Pano. He keeps making stupid comments all the time. And he would not have been very important if India had not had this botched attempt to try and kill him. So the backfire of the stupid attempt to try and assassinate him basically elevated Pano to an international affair episode. But otherwise, there isn't much of a strong lobby. The best that they can do is gather a few people and go and protest outside the US Embassy. There's nobody in the Congress or in the Senate who is pushing the Khalistan agenda. So to suggest that Kamala Harris is pro-Khalistan is absolutely nonsense. I don't think you can provide a single evidence where she has spoken or said anything about Khalistan, etc. Yes, she was critical of Modi. When Modi came here in 2021, she spoke with him about human rights. She spoke with him about the treatment of minorities. She said publicly that it is very important in this day and age where democracies are being challenged for democracies to be more democratic. We don't know what she said in the private, but in public, standing right next to Modi, she was very clear in her assertion that India should do better when it came to human rights and minority rights, and I think she will continue to say that. So what do I think? Well, I think that there will be change in how Kamala Harris's administration, if she wins, will deal with India. So think of it like this, that the right-wing Donald Trump, he got along well with Modi. They had 2 joint big sessions, Howdy Modi here in Texas, and then he went all the way to India and had another session with Modi publicly, where Modi said, "Ab ke baar Modi, Trump Raj," or something like that. So there was personal chemistry. Both are authoritarian, right-wing people who don't care about the human rights of minorities, etc. So they got along very well. But when Biden came, he was not as chummy with Modi as Trump was. So for Biden, India was important. They didn't like Modi. They don't like Modi. The Democrats don't like Modi. So for Biden, India is important. And so he was able to continue to work on the Quad, etc., until India basically began to pull back in the last 1 year. So as far as Biden was concerned, he moved away from being too pally with Modi like Donald Trump was, but the relations between India and the US did not change. Now, Kamala Harris is going to be more to the left of Biden. She'll be more progressive than Biden, who was more progressive than Trump. So there's going to be that movement. So we don't know what impact it is going to have, but it will definitely have impact on the kind of people who will be working in the State Department. They will be more like Obama and Kamala Harris people and less like Biden people. Certainly, I don't think Jake Sullivan or Blinken will be in Kamala Harris's administration. And of course, there will be nobody like Donald Trump's people in the State Department if Kamala Harris wins. The second thing is that so there will be a personal impact of her personality and of her progressiveness. So there will be definitely more attention paid to the State Department's human rights reports and the treatment of minorities. You can expect much more stronger statements from Kamala Harris as president than you ever got from Joe Biden, who really never made any comments about India's human rights record. Most of the comments came from Antony Blinken. But there's also a personal issue. So, for example, in 2021, as I pointed out, she was the one the Biden administration chose to tell Modi that he needs to do better on human rights and treatment of minorities. This was, remember, just a few months after the protests with regards to CAA and what was happening in Kashmir with the abolition of the 370 article from the Indian Constitution. So there were lots of protests and a lot of high-handed approach by the Indian government. And so there was a lot of criticism from the human rights community worldwide. And Kamala Harris was the messenger chosen by the Biden administration to deliver the message to Narendra Modi. But there was another episode 2 years prior to that, where Dr. Shanker, India's external affairs minister, simply refused to meet a very prominent Indian American member of the Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal, who is from the state of Washington near Seattle. She is a member of the Congress. She's highly respected. She is a very prominent member of the Indian caucus, which constitutes about 6 members of the Congress, but she's also a very important leader in the Progressive Caucus. So she was very critical of India and India's human rights record. She requested a meeting with Dr. Jaishankar and he refused to meet with her. But Kamala Harris then publicly criticized Dr. Jaishankar for not meeting with Jayapal. So I think there is a history there. And so if she becomes president, it would be very interesting to see whether the slate will be wiped clean and there will be kind of a reset with Kamala Harris Modi, Kamala Harris Jaishankar, or whether the past encounters will continue in her administration. I can't tell. I don't know. Her staffers say that she is a lot of people have left who work with her and it is quite possible that she may remember. Her meetings with Modi went really well, at least publicly, and so but she was clearly ticked off with Dr. Jaishankar. Anyway, the third thing, which is more important than either of the two things that I pointed out, which is global politics. America needs India to essentially be its partner to balance the growing military and economic influence of China. China is a rising power. China is challenging the United States' hegemony in Asia. And by making India its ally, whether India becomes a very serious partner in Quad or not, there's independent US-India relations or strategic comprehensive relations which are progressing. America wants India to become the alternate to China for foreign direct investment, for manufacturing. So there are a few things that America wants India to do. One is to be a military partner against China, which India has not committed to, but also to be a partner in the economic war against China, where India is eager to be a partner in this by basically hoping that manufacturing will shift from China to India. So this restructuring of the global supply chain is where India and the United States meet eye to eye. And this is important for the US to continue to sustain its hegemony. And it's also important to India to ensure that China doesn't become the dominant player in the region. So, given the nature of global politics, we have seen that there has been a broad consensus in Washington with regards to India since the time of George W. Bush, when there was an agreement and all the sanctions on India, which the US had imposed because of India's testing of nuclear weapons, were removed under the Bush administration. 2005 to around 2005 is when. So from then on, there has been a consensus in Washington that India is a very important country. US-India relations are the most important relationship, most significant partnership in this century. And as US pivot to Asia became the Indo-Pacific strategy, so if Russia had not attacked Ukraine, then I think both NATO and Europe would have disappeared from US foreign policy and would have been all China, China, China. We are entering into a kind of a new Cold War with China. So basically, with the Gaza war, the US was dragged back into the Middle East. With the Ukraine war, the US was dragged back into Europe. But the US strategic interests are in Asia at the moment to make sure that the US remains the most powerful country in the world. The US has to make sure that it is the dominant player in Asia, where the shift of economy, everything is shifting to Asia. Now, if you look at the top 10 economies in the world, you will find that in the top 3, you will soon have India and China. Right now, in the top 5, you have India, China, and Japan. So 3 of the top 5 economies are in Asia. South Korea is rising very fast. So is Indonesia. In less than 20 years, Indonesia will be the 4th biggest economy in the world. Turkey is rising. There is one more. Yes, Vietnam is also going up. So there will be lots and lots. In the top 20, there will be many Asian economies. So the future is Asia, not Europe. And therefore, India-US relations will remain very prominent. The people, whoever will work with Kamala Harris, understand that fully. So while there may be small personal reasons where there will be less friendly or more friendly partnerships, but I think that India's relations with the United States will not be significantly impacted by Kamala Harris becoming president. Yeah, she's not going to take selfies with Modi, or who knows, she might. But definitely India-US relations will be stronger regardless of who is in the White House and who is in leading the Lok Sabha. I also want to point out that the fact that Donald Trump was friendly just with Modi does not necessarily mean that he's good for India. And if you remember the kind of pressure he was putting on India on the issue of Harley-Davidson, which is such a small product when it comes to exports to India. The volume was so low, the amount is so low, but it had become a kind of a cause célèbre for Donald Trump. So it is quite possible that in his attempt to improve manufacturing in the US, that is his big goal, he may see India as an equally big problem like China. So if he is going to improve manufacturing here, then why would he support the shifting of the supply chain from China to India? Why would he support shifting of manufacturing from China to India when he would be trying very hard to shift it from all over the world back to the US? So while he may be pally with Modi, I don't think Trump would be that great a friend of India when it comes to geoeconomics. So that is my point of view, that let's not worry too much. India should not worry too much about who wins the US elections. India is sitting in a very nice position at the moment, and so don't worry too much. So if you found this conversation interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and share this video with your social political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.